Greetings, free thinkers, and welcome to the Hoggcast. Okay, I had another idea for another video today, but I'll leave that for an upload tomorrow because breaking news on the Epstein case. Somebody that the Epstein family had in the autopsy because they were suspicious, like everybody's suspicious, of how Jeffrey Epstein died. And their family put in this guy into the autopsy to basically observe what's going on, and he has reported that there's been some suspicious activity and some suspicious outcomes. So we're going to go through the footage of his interview with Fox News, and because they are only talking about the update, we will stop periodically to give context to what they are saying. So let's jump straight into the video, but first, by all means, if you can like this video, subscribe to the channel, hit the notification bell and share the video. That helps me out. So let's get straight into this hot news.
Right now, former New York City medical examiner Dr. Michael Baden. He's a forensic pathologist, Fox News contributor, and joins us right now for an exclusive interview. Dr. Baden, thanks for being here.
Hey, good morning.
Good morning.
When did you realize that the Epstein family needed help?
Well, I was asked by the brother, the next of kin, to be at the autopsy. And at the autopsy on day one, there were findings that were unusual for suicidal hanging and more consistent with ligature homicidal strangulation.
So, as you were saying, the family were very suspicious of the circumstances surrounding Epstein's death, as we all were. So they've got this guy in to stand in whilst the grisly task of the autopsy is being undertaken by the pathologists. Now, isn't it strange how we have people who are family members of the Illuminati who are very distrustful of the authorities that are undertaking the autopsy? Isn't that very revealing? To me, that is very, very revealing how the people who are supposedly in the know, the people who are connected to the Illuminati or the establishment, the swamp, the elite, and make no mistake, Jeffrey Epstein, a billionaire investor, a billionaire speculator, he is a very successful man. He was up to his neck in Illuminati, in elitism. He only got into trouble, as most of you probably already know, probably all of you know, for operating his high society people smuggling ring, where they were grooming girls or grooming young girls from all over the world, especially in countries that were poor, or in the United States with some of the girls from broken homes, for disadvantaged girls. So he was caught. He was being held in prison, and then he mysteriously dies before he can be brought to justice and name other people. Okay, let's continue watching.
Which included...
And it was suggested at the time that he committed suicide by doing what?
By hanging. At the time he was found allegedly hanging by a homemade ligature of sheets.
Are you saying you don't think it was suicide?
I think that the evidence points toward homicide rather than suicide.
Why?
Because there are multiple 3 fractures in the hyoid bone, the thyroid cartilage, that are very unusual for suicide.
Now, take the surroundings, the sittings of his cell. If Jeremy Epstein did commit suicide by hanging, he would have had to have done it by kneeling. He couldn't have dropped. There was no drop in the cell. Cells are built generally to be suicide proof. Of course, if you're intent on committing suicide, there's always a way of doing that. You'll always find a way of committing suicide if your intention is to commit suicide. However, we don't know that Jeffrey Epstein's intention was to commit suicide. He might have wanted to live, he might have wanted to do his time, but there might have been people who seriously did not want him to talk, and I personally believe that is the case. Now, going back to what I was saying about the settings of his cell, it is possible to commit suicide by hanging via dropping, kneeling. I mean, just you kneel down and let yourself go until you pass out. As crazy as that sounds, that is possible. I personally know that is possible, but I won't go into that. But personally, I know it is possible to do that. That being said, it would not fracture or break any part of your neck or body in the process of doing that. Of course, you could argue, well, if they were left to kneeling with a ligature around their neck and over time with dead weight, could it do that? Possibly, yes. However, he wasn't left there that long. He wasn't left there long enough for the process of his body to start breaking down or anything. Let's continue watching.
And more indicative of strangulation, homicidal strangulation.
Let's take a look at what the medical examiner stated. After careful review of all the investigative information, including complete autopsy findings, the determination on the death of Epstein is below. Cause, hanging, manner, suicide. You say that his fatal injuries are consistent with homicide?
More consistent with homicide. And in fact, at the time of the autopsy, the doctor doing the autopsy didn't think it was enough information to say suicide, so she put it pending further study. And then for some reason, and they want to know, the family wants to know, why was it changed from pending further study to homicide afterwards?
So to elaborate, the first doctor that examined the body of Jeffrey Epstein brought back a conclusion that it needed further study. So this wasn't a clear-cut case of suicide. The individual doctor, the first one, was highly suspicious of the circumstances surrounding his death, so she put for further study, that is the third very suspicious thing we have brought up in this video. So let's continue.
You're there watching them perform this autopsy. You notice these 3 broken bones, and you believe it would be homicide. So that would mean another person would have gone into his cell, strangled him. Did he have any signs of trying to fight back?
Well, they took fingernail clippings to see if there's anybody else's DNA on it, and that hasn't been released. Neither has the information about whose DNA is on the ligature.
Now, I don't know if it's standard practice in suicide victims to take fingernail scrapings or DNA from ligatures. It might be, it might not. I don't know. That is something I can't comment on because I don't know. I could speculate, but I would rather not. So we will go with what this particular pathologist is saying on this point, in that it is suspicious how these findings haven't been released. But let's continue.
A ligature was made out of torn strips of orange sheets, and whoever made it had to have a lot of DNA on it, and the brother's been asking that from day one.
So wait a second. So you're saying that whoever made it has to have a lot of DNA on it, and there was?
No, we don't even know if it was examined.
All right. So you say when you left the examination room, they weren't sure what happened.
That's right.
So you know this procedure. What happened in the interim to get this such a blunt conclusion?
Well, a week later, it was changed to homicide. The brother wants to know, what did they get new in that week to make it to homicide?
What's your answer?
So the plot thickens. First, the first pathologist or doctor who examined the body said, I can't rule this as a suicide out and out. It needs further investigation. The second doctor or pathologist who examined the body, according to the Epstein family pathologist who was present, and remember, as much of the elitist types that the Epstein family are themselves, remember, on this point, they are actually on our side because they don't believe the official excuse either. They believe that something highly suspect happened to Jeffrey Epstein, and this is his own family. As elitist as they are on this particular issue, they are on our side, those of us anyway, who believe that something highly suspicious was going on, that he was possibly turned off so that his mouth couldn't open. Let's continue.
To that.
We don't know. We don't know. It's 80 days now.
Right.
And the brother feels he's getting a runaround. And to add to it, there was a total breakdown in security. The video cameras didn't work. The guards went to sleep.
What about that guy who was in the cell?
That's another important thing. Apparently, all of the security cameras in the prison that he was being held in, or the jail that he was being held in, were working except this one, which overlooked his cell. Now, of course, apparently the guards were asleep. Now, that ties into the next point I was going to bring up, which is the bigger a conspiracy gets, generally, the more people are involved, and the more people you would have to silence, or the more people would have to agree to stay silent. So the larger a conspiracy becomes, the less believable it is, in my opinion, because simply of the more people that are involved, the more likelihood that they're going to say something, and the more the likelihood that it's all going to come collapsing down. That being said, it is suspicious how that one CCTV camera was not working. So let's continue.
With him earlier, where it was suggested that guy tried to kill him.
Well, he had a new roommate now because of a suicide watch, a different roommate. But that roommate was...
Sorry to interrupt again. I just wanted to say that the point that he just made, he was given a cellmate who tried to kill him. Now, you could say he was put up to that by the elite, the Clintons, whoever, etc., etc. Or you could just say that it was a cellmate who wanted to kill him because he was what they call a chomo. Now, that brings up a set of strange circumstances in itself, because why was Epstein, a very high-profile individual who had charges of that nature anyway, given a cellmate who could likely kill him or do something bad to him? That is a very strange set of circumstances in itself. Did somebody make this decision with the intention to have him killed? Let's continue.
Pulled away the day or two before, so that there was no roommate with him, no suicide watch, no security guards, no videotapes that were working. Was the FBI able to get some information from the video?
I know that you were hired back in the 70s to do this as your job. You really investigated deaths in prisons after the big riot and all these prisoners died. So in your experience, what are the chances of him not being checked on for 3 hours, from 3:30 to 6:30 when they found his body, and the 2 prison guards falling asleep?
Extremely unlikely. I've never seen it in 50 years.
Think about it. What is the likelihood of that happening? Bearing in mind that he had fractures to his throat, a particular part of his throat, which, as I said earlier, you could argue that, oh, well, that was just him, the dead weight of him when he was kneeling, because, as I said, there is no room in the cell that Epstein was in to drop. He couldn't drop 5 foot, 6 foot, 3 foot, 2 foot, or even 1 foot. He had to kneel. He had to tie the bed sheets. If it was a legit suicide, he had to tie the bed sheets to a piece of furniture in the cell and drop. He was already on suicide watch, and he still managed to allegedly commit suicide. Let's continue watching.
Years investigating all deaths that occur in prisons in New York State. Never had 2 guards fall asleep at the same time. All the video doesn't work. And the issue would be, did somebody come in and cause his death?
Well, what about the suggestion you may be biased because you were hired by the family?
That's always...
I absolutely disagree with that, and I'll tell you why, and I already alluded to this earlier on. The family of Epstein are up to their necks in elitism and Illuminati. They are the rich, the elite, along with him. These aren't people who claim welfare. They aren't working class people. They have been in, and I'm not saying working class people just claim welfare. I mean, I'm working class myself, but you understand the point I'm trying to make, okay? These people are elites. 99.9% of the time, they have the trendy, right-on, multicultural opinions, left-wing opinions. On this one thing, they are strangely on our side of the tracks in terms of opinions and takes on what exactly happened to Epstein. So, no, I personally don't buy the idea that he's biased, etc., because how could he be? How could they be? Okay, let's continue.
A situation, except that Governor Rockefeller, after Attica in 71, set up a special board to look into all deaths in prisons in New York State because the concern that police, medical examiners and guards were biased when the inmates complained that deaths were being covered up, and we have a...
Now, put yourself in the position of a guard or a prison nurse in that jail at the time. Would you, if something suspicious happened and you knew, or even if you just thought something suspicious either has happened to Jeffrey Epstein or prior to his death were going to happen to Jeffrey Epstein, would you be brave enough to whistleblow, or would you be stupid enough to whistleblow? That's what you've got to think about. Going back to what I said about a conspiracy, the bigger it is, the more people are involved, you have to ask is, would you be willing, if they're willing to topple or to kill or to get rid of Epstein, who is an elitist himself, what would they be willing to do to you and your family? So you have to think about that. Would you talk or would you keep stum? So let's continue.
Separate board that looks into all these deaths.
Dr. Bond, what I don't understand is if everybody wants the same thing, the truth, the brothers shouldn't be fighting anything. They should be interviewing you and saying, wait, tell me about what you have. Have people investigating this case prior to them ruling it a suicide contacted you?
Not at all.
None. Do you find that strange?
Yes. If the Attorney General is investigating the cause of death, as they're doing the security of this issue, right, in this issue, somebody should have been investigating everybody who had anything to do with the autopsy, sure.
So if there was a prisoner that went in and strangled him and the DNA is on that, whatever
ligature,
he used, the ligature, the sheets, the bed sheets, then wouldn't it be easy to track down who that person was?
Well, in my opinion, yes, of course it would be. If that person has had their... well, they would do it. If they're a prisoner, they would have had their DNA taken when they came into being booked into the system. Of course they would be. However, it is a case of would the establishment or the swamp want to? And people often use the term government, etc., etc. However, I'm not bringing Donald Trump into this. I'm personally a Donald Trump fan, and he's the opposite of the swamp. So when I say the establishment, please do not think I am bringing Trump or his administration into this. We've already seen how certain intelligence agencies and organizations can operate against even the elected president of the United States of America. We saw that with the two so-called lovers who, with their insurance policy, who are trying to bring down Donald Trump. If they can target the president, they can target Epstein. Let's continue.
Absolutely. That's first thing. The medical examiner at the time of the first autopsy did swabs of all the clothing on him for DNA. But who had the ligature?
Well, who has that information? Why isn't that being released?
That's what the brother wants to know. That's why they asked me to come here.
So you're calling on the state to figure out whose DNA is on that?
Not the state, unfortunately. This is a federal prison, so the state has not. The FBI usually investigates, would be investigating it,
and of course you have the likes of the lovers. And you have to ask, I mean, look, I respect the FBI, don't get me wrong. I know I don't live in the United States, I'm an Englishman, but I love America and I love the FBI, but I dislike some of the swampiness, some of the political activists that have infiltrated the FBI, just like they've infiltrated everything else, and they put their own self-centered activism and elitism before anything else. Okay, let's continue.
The brother wants to know, one, did the FBI get a hold of that ligature? And two, it only takes a couple of days to do the DNA. What's the results?
Dr. Bodden, I know you're just somebody who looks at a situation, cut and dry. I'm looking at DNA, looking at hard facts. How important in your investigation conclusion is his mindset prior to suicide. And the fact that he had plans afterwards and that he spent so much time with his lawyers the day before.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. The great majority.
That is a very good point. People who are suicidal are generally very subdued, very quiet. Obviously, it goes without saying they wouldn't have plans or made any type of plans to do anything. He was already meeting with his solicitors. Now, I should imagine that he was trying to broker a deal in which he would name all and sundry in the hopes of maybe seeing the light of day again. You know, these people, especially people like Epstein, they live elitist lifestyles, and to go from being the king of the manor in a luxury yacht to being in a prison cell or a jail cell with nothing would probably be extremely jarring for someone who's extremely used to the highest quality lifestyle you can get, and not only that, but getting away with all manner of crimes. I should imagine Jeffrey Epstein actually felt very affronted that the authorities had dared to arrest him in the first place. Okay, let's continue.
People commit suicide give warning signs ahead. Now, one of the warning signs could have been the incident July 23rd when he said the roommate assaulted him and the guard said it was a suicide attempt, and they should have been watching him.
Sure.
They didn't watch him. According to the guards, according to his lawyers at that time, he was in good mood. He was hoping that he was still waiting for a decision whether he can get out on bail. That hadn't come yet.
Well, he had so many victims. I think the victims really deserve to know what happened.
You're absolutely right. There are a lot of things happened, but also the brother.
And of course, that's a very good point. You know, he has a lot of victims, but he's not the only one. I remember, personally, I can remember, I mean, this has been going on for years, of course, and I can remember years ago, well, I was quite young, actually, but it's just back in the days when I still used to watch the mainstream media, and there was a particular story about some elitist gentleman in France I'm not sure if he came from France, but he was in France at the time, who had been offered a girl who was not yet adult, we could put it that way, by an actual escort agency. But the thing that always stuck with me is the escort agency said that this particular girl was offered to, quote unquote, prestigious clients. What do you think that means? Clients who are prestigious. It means the elites, the people who work in Brussels right now, they're still into that type of thing. Right now, okay, the people, what do you think, why do you think diplomatic immunity was even created in the first place? Why would you need diplomatic immunity if you're a good guy, if you have no intention of doing anything wrong? It's like, imagine immunity for carpenters. Why would you do that? Why would you need immunity from committing crimes for certain professions? Why would you need it unless you're up to no good? Think about it. Okay, let's continue.
Is concerned that if he was murdered, then other people who have information might be at risk and jeopardy.
Look, the heart doesn't go out with this guy. This guy seems like just a terrible person who used his power and manipulation ability for evil means. I get it. But there's so...
Now, what the anchor just said, that he used his power and his influence and his money for evil means, that can also be turned straight back around on Epstein, because you can use that as justification to say that he was murdered, that the swamp, the establishment, the Illuminati, call them what you want, they had him killed. Because, again, as the anchor said, they used their power, their money, their influence, their position to do evil, as he just said. Let's continue.
So many people who are implicated in his web of ugliness. You wonder if this plays a role. The powerful people that his antics affected and would have been affected had he lived.
You're absolutely right, and that's one of the things that the brother thinks as well. If they think he has information that his life would be in jeopardy.
What does the brother tell you? What does he think happened?
He thinks that he wants to find the answer to it, and he thinks that his brother wasn't the type to commit suicide, but he'd like to get the information that he hasn't been able to get so far.
How hard is it to commit suicide in prison?
Very easy, but first, in this situation, if he took the...
I disagree with that. It depends. For a start, committing suicide isn't a very easy thing to begin with, whether you're in prison or out of prison. It takes a lot of mental fortitude. It takes you have to reach absolute rock bottom and then some before you even contemplate committing suicide. If you're a happy individual, you don't commit suicide. I mean, it's as simple as that. I don't need to explain that to you. Then we go into prison, and it isn't as easy as you think. Most modern prisons don't have bars on the cells. They have cell doors, and inside the cells, they don't have anything you can hang from. This is what I said earlier about him having to kneel. Sure, if you've got the wherewithal and the absolute desire to end your own life, then yes, you can do that. You can commit suicide anywhere, really, providing you've got something to do it with. But to say that it's very easy in prison is I personally disagree with him on that one. It's just my opinion. He's entitled to his own. You're entitled to your own. But that's just my opinion. So let's continue.
Sheets and stripped it would have taken a good half hour or hour to make the ligature, then to go up there. Once you're hanging, it's about 5 minutes or so that you can be near dead.
Dr. Bodden, though, if the supposition is that it was a homicide, that would mean cops were in on it. Who opened the door, who moved the cameras, all of that stuff. Was it someone on the outside?
And that goes hand in hand with what I was saying earlier about the bigger a conspiracy gets, generally speaking, the more people are going to be involved. But like I said afterwards, would you, if you was involved or if you was pressurised in being involved, would you go and tell anyone? Maybe you would, maybe you wouldn't. But if you did, and this has actually happened, if it has actually happened, and Jeffrey Epstein was actually bumped off, what would happen to you? You know, you're a average person out and about. You're not an elitist like Epstein. That would have to surely go through your mind. And he mentioned about the police, prison officers having to be involved. Well, we already know that 2 of them were allegedly asleep and the camera wasn't working. So let's continue.
Was it inside job?
That's right.
That's a terrible allegation.
Why were the two guards asleep in 50 years of looking at deaths in New York State? Occasionally a guard falls asleep. Never 2 guards at the same time. The cell, the camera in the cell watching didn't work. The camera in the hallway to see if anybody came in and out of his cell didn't work. This is bizarre that his roommate was taken.
It is. Let's be honest, it is. Whether Jeffrey Epstein did commit suicide or whether he was a victim of homicide and bumped off by the establishment, the Clintons, call them what you like. Either way, it is a very bizarre set of circumstances. That is beyond question. You can't question that. Now, you have to think, what is the chances of this being a coincidence? Let's play devil's advocate and say that he was a victim of suicide. Yeah, he committed suicide. Now, what is the chances that that particular camera in his cell wouldn't work, the camera outside his cell wouldn't work? It just happened to be Epstein who committed suicide, who just happened to be put in that cell, who just happened to have that cellmate, who just happened to try and kill him, who just happened to get moved out of the cell, who just happened to have time, in Epstein's case, to commit suicide whilst on the shift of 2 prison officers who just happened to be asleep at the same time on that shift that was in the pod that was overlooking Epstein. It's coincidence after coincidence after coincidence after coincidence and onwards. Think about it. Okay, let's go.
Away, so he's all by himself. Suicide watch was taken away. So yeah, the issue you bring up has to be investigated. Doesn't mean that this was a homicide, but certainly it deserves investigation. And the brother's concerned there is no investigation.
Have you ever seen anyone that committed suicide and was hanging themselves with those 3 broken bones?
No. Hanging does not cause these broken bones. And
He's never seen it before in his career. Okay, and we had the first original pathologist who said that who examined Epstein's body and said this needs further examination. Think about it. Okay, we're going to finish the video now.
Homicide does. Usually two bones, even three, is a huge amount of pressures was applied.
Okay, how different is all this for anyone, let alone a high-profile prison?
Oh, there were 800 other people in the correction facility, and most of them would have liked him to get their hands on him. One, because he had sexual things.
Now that is the other aspect that I touched on earlier. If he was murdered, and I don't mean by the Illuminati or the elitists, etc., etc., it would have been because another prisoner wanted to kill him for being a chomo. Now, you have to, but that of course brings up its own set of inconsistencies, because the prison generally wouldn't put someone like that in with Epstein, who was super high profile. They might have put it in with a deadbeat, but not Epstein. It wouldn't have happened because money talks. Okay, let's the videos. This particular video's only got 20 seconds left, and then we'll finish up.
2, because to make a name for themselves. 3, because somebody could put them up to it. You're right, though. A number of people had to be involved if this is a homicide.
Okay, Dr. Biden,
Okay, and that was it. Now, let me know, guys, what you think, your own opinions in the comments. I'm super interested in this. By all means, I need you to share this video, because I'm currently banned. I'm censored on social media, so I can't share my videos on Facebook. I'm still on Twitter. My handle is @HoggcastM. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. Thank you very much to all my friends who have been sharing this video for me whilst I've been censored. Thank you to Mark O'Sullivan, to Tez Maroney, to Callie Olsen, and Trishan Ward, my favourite Aussie bogan. If you could share this in your Australia groups, that would help me out. Thank you very much. Let me know what you think, and I'll see you later. Goodbye.